Did you know that there are only 3 questions that you have to answer to figure out compatibility for your tractor in any attachment or implement on the market? My name is Mike Reese. I've been in the heavy equipment industry for over half a decade. I've sold over $7 million worth of heavy equipment. I had an e-commerce company that grew by over 100% every single year of its operations, and I built and now run Matchpoint Intelligence, a fully universal compatibility matching and analytics engine for any heavy equipment vehicle and any attachment that it can utilize. So, digging right in, for tractors, the only thing that we have to worry about is going to be the laws of physics, right? And because of that, the only thing that we have to do is answer 3 specific questions. The questions are this: 1, can the tractor connect to the attachment or implement? 2, can the tractor power the attachment or implement? And 3, can the tractor lift the attachment or implement that you're going to consider using, right? So let's talk about how we actually figure this out. I'm going to give a few parameters about how we're going to bucket all this information. So the first is that this is really going to be for subcompact, compact, and utility tractors. Any of these hugely larger row crop tractors or anything like that, that's going to be out of the scope of this particular video. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to mentally split tractors right in the middle. We're going to split them in half. We're going to talk about the rear of the tractor with the PTO and the implements that you would use on the rear of the tractor. And then we're going to talk about the front of the tractor in terms of like the loader arms and the attachments and the hydraulic power and stuff that you would use there. So with that in mind, let's dig in. Can connect. Can something connect? Can the tractor connect to the attachment? Can the attachment connect to the tractor? How do we figure that out? So for the rear of the tractor, you have a 3-point hitch. That's going to be the main interface that your tractor uses to connect with an attachment. Now, 3-point hitches come in different categories. They're standardized across these categories in terms of like the pin diameter and the spacing between the arms. Most commonly on these sizes of tractors, you'll see category 1 3-point hitch, limited category 1 3-point hitch, category 2 3-point hitch, and sometimes category 3 3-point hitches. Those are the main things that you need to worry about. So you're going to need to know what 3-point hitch that your tractor has. Some 3-point hitches for tractors have both category 2 and category 1 3-point hitch designation, and that's usually just like a little like ball socket in the actual 3-point hitch itself. The reason for that is that category 1 and category 2 3-point hitches are essentially exactly the same except for the pin diameter that goes through the actual hitch itself on the linkage arms. So John Deere does this, I think, with like the 4044M, I want to say, and they'll have the linkage arms. The spacing is the same between category 1 and category 2. And then in the actual socket of the linkage arms, you'll see like a ball socket that rotates. And one is a thinner diameter and one's a thicker diameter. The thinner diameter is category 1, thicker diameter is category 2. The other thing to know about this, by the way, is if you have a category 1 attachment or implement that has a category 1 hitch and category 1 pins, you can actually put that on a category 2 hitch if you get a set of bushings. You can get them from Amazon. They're like $18 maximum. And all they do is they increase the diameter of the pin as it goes through that actual like the pinhole. And you can put it on category 2 arms just as easily because the spacing and everything else is the same. So we have the 3-point hitch category. You need to know that on your tractor, if it's category 1, category 2, whatever it is, and you need to know that on the attachment itself. There's another thing that you'll see on compact tractors of this size, something called a quick hitch, right? And this basically just saves you time. You hook it onto your 3-point hitch. It's like a frame that you put on, and rather than having to like undo the pins every single time, it basically, the pins are fixed on the bottom and it just hooks on the top, so it just like links right in. So it's a lot easier to actually utilize. You'll need to know if an attachment is quick hitch compatible. Not all of them are. So if you have a category 1 3-point hitch and you have a quick hitch on it and you put an attachment on it that isn't quick hitch compatible, you're not going to be able to hook it onto that quick hitch. You're going to have to take it off and then hook it straight onto the arms as normal. So that's the rear of the tractor in terms of can something connect. You're going to need to know the 3-point hitch of the tractor and the 3-point hitch mount system of the attachment itself. For the front of the tractor, most tractors will have loader arms, right? And the loader arms themselves are going to have an attachment interface. Think of these loader arms as like, if you know skid steers or any other like loaders, it's the same thing. You're just taking the arms of those, you're putting it on your tractor, you mount them on there, and then the front of the tractor has an attachment interface that's going to be designated to fit with certain types of attachments. Now, most tractor manufacturers these days have luckily gone to the universal skid steer quick attach as their attachment interface on their loader arms, which means you could use any attachment that's designated for a skid steer on the front of your tractors in terms of being able to physically connect to it. There are some tractor companies that don't do this. John Deere notoriously is one of them. They, for certain sizes of their tractors, will have their own proprietary hook and pin style connector, and that does not work with skid steer universal quick attach attachments, right? The other thing that you're going to need to know is when we're talking about powered attachments, you're going to need to know about hose couplers and you're going to need to know about wire harnesses. Now, on skid steers and mini skid steers, the hose couplers are standardized. On tractors, they are definitely not, right? You'll need to know this for your tractor. This is something that you're going to want to just check ahead of time. There's a couple different types. You have the flush face, flat face quick connects. There's also like the pop-in style. There's a few different types. You just need to like reference your manual and know what you have so that you can tell it to the person that you're buying equipment from. And on the other side, if you are the person selling equipment, you're going to need to know what this can be made with, and if the couplings for hoses, if you have separate hoses and themselves that can be swapped out for this particular attachment, that have the machine side couplers for this particular type of tractor. The last thing is going to be wire harnesses. The loader arms will have like a plug for the wire harness. Usually you don't have to run it all the way through to the tractor itself. But you'll just need to know what types of pins that your wire harness has. Usually it's like a 14 pin. And if the attachment itself, or if not, if the attachment, if the loader arms don't have like a fixed wire harness for that, most attachments will have an option where you can just use a cigarette plug as the wire harness, and you can put that in right in like the cab of your tractor, and that'll just run all the way along your loader arms into your cab. So that's the first thing. That's can it connect? The second thing is can the vehicle power the attachment? So again, we're going to break this into the rear of the tractor and then the front of the tractor. So the rear of the tractor uses PTO power, power takeoff power. It's a drive shaft basically powered by the engine power, and it's where most of the powered attachments for tractors will go. The reason for that is that the hydraulic system of the tractor is not nearly as powerful as mini skid steers or full-size skid steers for sure. So even though you might have the attachment interface on the front, that's a universal quick attach, or even if it's like the Euro Global like ag, the larger one for tractors, you still probably won't be able to use powered attachments on the front of your tractors because you just don't have enough juice in your hydraulic system. For example, a lot of tractors, especially smaller tractors, will usually have like flow ranges in terms of like 4 gallons per minute or like 8 gallons per minute. Whereas mini skid steers will start at 8 gallons per minute and go up to like 16. Skid steers can go all the way from up to like 40 gallons per minute at high flow. So you're just dealing with very different power profiles here. Um, this came out a lot when we were selling equipment and people wanted to get mulchers and they wanted to put mulchers on the front of your tractor because obviously you don't want to have to be turning around to like mulch something, right? The reality is that you're just not going to be able to get enough juice on the front of your tractor. It's usually going to have to go on the PTO power, the engine power, right? So there's two things you need to know about the rear of the tractor and the PTO to figure out what your tractor is actually capable of. On your manufacturer's like brochure or your website and stuff, you'll usually be given two designations in terms of horsepower. You'll be given the engine horsepower, and usually you'll be given the PTO horsepower of the tractor. If you aren't given the PTO horsepower, a good rule of thumb is that the PTO horsepower is about 80% of the engine power. You just lose a little bit of the power over like the course of the traveling across the PTO shaft and things like that. Um, but ultimately, what manufacturers are going to be building stuff off of is the utilized power from the PTO shaft to their attachment. You'll see sometimes manufacturers, if you're looking at attachments, they might reference engine horsepower. And again, it's just that easy rule of thumb of like 20% less for the PTO power, but just know what you're looking at when you're looking at attachments, if you're looking at the engine horsepower or if you're looking at the PTO horsepower. And if the attachment says engine horsepower, then just use the engine horsepower of your tractor. It's not super complicated, but just know that that's how it works. The other thing that you'll want to know, and this is usually for much smaller like compact tractors or subcompact tractors, is there are some attachments that require a hydrostatic transmission versus a normal gear-driven transmission. Um, you don't really need to know too much of the details about it. It's just a smoother power curve. You'll see it on stump grinders a lot for very small, like subcompact tractors, like a John Deere 1024R or something like that. Just know if the attachment requires a hydrostatic transmission or not, and know for your tractor what transmission that you actually have, right? If you can do that, if you know the transmission of your tractor, if you know your engine horsepower, if you know your PTO horsepower, and if you know for the attachment side how much PTO horsepower it takes, how much engine horsepower it takes, and if it requires a hydrostatic transmission, that's all you need to know if it's going to work with your vehicle or not, right? And again, just reviewing this for the last time, the powered attachments that you're going to want to use on a tractor are almost always going to go on the rear. Like anything destructive is going to go on the rear of the tractor. You're not really going to be able to get it on the front of the tractor. Now, on the front of the tractor, on the loader arms, those operate very similar to how a skid steer works. So they use hydraulic flow and they use hydraulic pressure. Now, the loader arms of your tractor usually won't tell you what flow it has because your tractor itself has an open center hydraulic system, and that's going to be what the flow is. It just goes from that to the actual loader arms and stuff. So you're going to be able to see two or three different designations on your tractor's vehicle information. You'll see like overall hydraulic flow. So it'll say like 6 gallons per minute, and then it will say something like implement flow. Now, because you have an open center hydraulic system, that means that the flow is shared between like steering and things like that and between the implement at the same time. So it's going to tell you like the usable flow for your implement while you're using it. And that will typically be less than the overall hydraulic flow that you have for your tractor. So if you have 8 gallons per minute hydraulic flow, then your implement flow is usually going to be something like 6 gallons per minute. And that's going to be the maximum amount of flow that you're going to be able to use for an attachment on the front of your tractor on the loader arms, right? The second thing that comes into question around can something power it is the hydraulic pressure. Tractors, again, they have a smaller hydraulic system than most other machines, so they typically have lower hydraulic pressure. You're going to be looking at things like 22,000 or 2,200 psi, 2,500 psi, maybe 2,700 psi as you get into the larger things, and usually not above 3,000. Attachments on the other side usually operate best, depending on if they're made for skid steers or not, at like 3,000 psi. So just know if that you're going to have enough pressure to be able to actually turn what you're trying to turn. And if the attachment that you're using requires pressure as one of the main functionalities of it, like an auger or something like that, right? The other thing you need to know about the hydraulic system for tractors is that you will usually see something called hydraulic remotes, and you'll see something called a third function kit, right? Hydraulic remotes are literally just where the ports are on your tractor for the actual hoses to plug in. Now, if you don't have loader arms in your tractor, your hydraulic remotes are usually going to be in the rear of the tractor, all the way in the back. And it'll say you have 1 or 2 hydraulic remotes, which means you can plug in things for like 1 or 2 hoses for your hydraulic attachment. You don't want to get into a situation where if you have loader arms and you don't have any hydraulic remotes in the middle of your tractor on the loader arms where you're running hoses from the front of your tractor all the way to the rear of the tractor. If that's happening, you're going to want to get an additional like set of hydraulic remotes installed, or you're going to need like a third function kit or something installed as well. Now, the third function kit allows you to have a third function for your hydraulics on your tractor to be used with your joystick. What are the 3 functions? In any attachment utilization, there are 3 main functions. They are the lift, so lifting the arms up and down. They are the tilt, so tilting the attachment while it's on the arms to like dump stuff out of a bucket. And then the third function is whatever ancillary additional function you might need, like a grapple, for example. So if you have a grapple bucket, you can lift it, you can tilt it, but if you don't have a third function kit on your tractor, you're not going to be able to open and articulate the grapples themselves. This is also anything with like rotating attachments or clamping stuff. That's usually where you'll see it. Things like augers and stuff don't really need a third function kit. But again, in terms of hydraulic remotes and stuff for your loader arms, if we're working on the front of the tractor, make sure you have ports in the middle of your tractor to actually hook the hoses to. Make sure you have enough functions for what you're trying to do, and make sure your hydraulic flow on your tractor and your hydraulic pressure on your tractor work with what the attachment is capable of. On the attachment side of things, you're going to be given, for the attachment motor, you're going to be given a flow range rather than a flow. So it'll say this attachment works between 6 and 16 gallons per minute, and it has a maximum operating pressure of 3,000 psi. You just need to know for your tractor if the flow that you have is in that range, and if the pressure you have is under that pressure rating. Now, the last thing about the pressure, I know this video is getting kind of long, but the last thing about the pressure is there are some types of attachments that use pressure as like their primary power process. A good one would be like augers, especially if you're doing like helical piling. You're not going to be able to use most of those on a tractor, especially like helical piling. You will be able to use augers. So if you're going to just be drilling fence posts and stuff like that, They do make augers specifically for tractors with like a direct drive rather than a planetary drive, that uses your lower flow and works with your pressure, and you will be able to get good performance out of it on your loader arms. But you're definitely not going to be able to get pressure and like performance out of something like a mulcher or a brush cutter or something like that on the front of your tractor. So destructive attachments are generally like a no-go here. Now, the last question, lift. Can a tractor physically lift the attachment? Because if you can do all that other stuff, but say you put something on your 3-point hitch and stuff, and it's way too heavy, and your tractor's like tilted, you're just like dragging this thing along, front wheels aren't touching the ground. That's not where you want to be either. So it's important that you cover this base as well. So on the rear of the tractor, you have a 3-point hitch. On your brochure or your manufacturer's page for this tractor on the web, they're going to show two measurements here. They're going to show the lift capacity, and they're going to show the 24 inches behind lift capacity for your 3-point hitch. So it'll say 3-point hitch lift capacity, 3-point hitch lift capacity, 24 inches behind. You want to use the one that's 24 inches behind because you have your linkage arms and stuff like that where it connects and the attachment connects on the mount, and the actual weight of the attachment is going to be about 2 feet behind the actual like start of where your 3-point hitch begins. And so that number, which is typically a little bit less than the lift capacity, is what you want to use. And you just want to make sure, again, if you're looking for like a mulcher or something that might be like 1,000 pounds, you just want to make sure that your linkage arms have the lift capacity to support that, so the linkage arms either don't break or you're not like dragging your butt across the ground trying to drive your tractor, right? Now on the front, it's very easy for loader arms. This is a loader arms lift capacity. They don't do it the same way with skid steers where they give you like a tipping load and stuff like that. They'll just give you the straight up lift capacity, and that's all you have to use. It's basically the rated operating capacity. They will just tell you it's lift capacity, but that's what they're going to give you. Now, most of the time that's just one number, and you're going to see this on the actual loader arms designation for your tractor rather than on the tractor itself. So if you have a John Deere tractor and you get like a 440R loader arms, on the page for the 440R loader arms is where the lift capacity is going to be for those loader arms. It's not going to be on the tractor. The other thing that you need to know is that there's features that are coming out called mechanical self-leveling. John Deere has this a lot. Most of the other manufacturers don't quite have it yet, but this is something that like mechanically, like as you're driving on a hill and stuff like that, it'll keep your load stable. It's like a gyroscope basically. And it's not literally a gyroscope, but it does it where like it uses like electronics and stuff like that to figure that out. So if you get mechanical self-leveling on your tractor, you will have on your loader arms, you're going to have a different lift capacity than if you don't have mechanical self-leveling. It's usually going to be a little bit lower with mechanical self-leveling, but the quality of life is generally a little bit higher in terms of just being able to like not dump it onto your material as you're driving. So just be aware that that exists and make sure you know what loader arms you have, what package you got with them, and refer to the loader arms page on your manufacturer to make sure you understand what the lift capacity is. Also, by the way, if you're looking at brochures, there's going to be a separate section for specs for the loader arms compared to the tractor itself. They're usually going to be in the same brochure, but just make sure you find like the loader arm section. The very last thing that you need to be aware of for tractors and for can something lift it is that for the loader arms, you need to worry about the attachment weight itself. So how heavy the attachment is, and make sure that's under the lift capacity of your loader arms and the material that you will be carrying. So usually if you have a bucket, you're going to be given like a strut capacity of the bucket in terms of like cubic yards, right? You just need to know how much weight your dirt or your mulch or your hay or whatever you're doing is going to be in terms of like cubic yards for the strut capacity, and add that weight to the weight of the attachment itself. And as long as that's under your rated operating capacity, you're going to be golden. You're going to be completely fine in terms of using it. So in review, I know we covered a lot here, and that's because tractors are complex. They're a little like difficult to figure out sometimes, but overall, as long as you kind of like chunk it into sections like this, am I only looking in the rear? Am I only looking in the front? You really only have to answer 3 main questions, which is, can my tractor power it? Can my tractor connect to it? And can my tractor lift it for the section of the tractor that matters for this particular attachment? Now, if you found this helpful, if you thought this was interesting, there's an even easier way to do all of this, and that's what Matchpoint Intelligence does. If you're an e-commerce company or a rental company and you are selling equipment to consumers that use these kind of things, and you don't want to have to go through this every single time someone asks you a question, that's exactly what we do. Go to matchpointintelligence.com, choose your company path if it's e-commerce or rental companies. Click that page, go to the bottom of that page, and book a call with me. I'll talk you through what we can do, how it helps, and the performance impact that we've seen when you don't have to ask customers all these questions, when customers can just know shopping on your page if their equipment is compatible or not, and what that does for the performance of your company.